Story number 1. Am I the asshole for wanting my grandma out of my life? Hey, I've been thinking for a long time whether I should share my story and ask for your opinion, and I've decided to do it now. When I was 2 years old, my biological mother had a serious motorcycle accident and suffered severe brain injuries. She went directly into hospice care and was in a coma. I don't know if you've ever seen someone in a coma, but she looked very different afterward, and as a child, I found her scary. Well, after my mother's accident, I initially stayed with my grandparents, who had already lost their first son and were deeply affected by my mother's accident. My grandparents were unable to care for me, hoping that my mother would magically recover if she saw me, her child, so they repeatedly took me to the hospice. I don't remember it anymore, but whenever I see a picture of my biological mother, I get terrible fear that I can't explain to myself. Anyway, my grandparents eventually realized that they couldn't take care of me and handed me over to my father, who also couldn't take care of me. So I was passed on to my aunt. I was about 3 at the time, who already had a biological daughter and neglected me severely. Eventually, the authorities found out about this and took me out of the family and placed me in foster care. However, because I was traumatized and screamed in the new families, I was quickly passed through about 10 foster families who all didn't want me until I finally ended up with my parents. Who went through hell with me? I had nightmares every night about my mother, wet the bed, and couldn't trust anyone. Now, over 20 years later, everyone notices that I'm different. Due to the trauma in my childhood, I have extreme difficulty trusting people, I have almost no friends, and I am bullied heavily in school because I'm just different. That's my story. My biological mother died 5 years after her accident in hospice, and my grandfather died in 2013, which means my grandmother is the only one left. I've always tried to visit her once a month, but during these visits, she always has pictures of my mother in the kitchen from when she was in a coma, and I'm just afraid. Also, during these visits, my grandmother never asks how I'm doing, she just cries and talks about how she's lost everyone and how terrible her life has been. And she brings up all the old stories from my childhood that I just want to forget. Now, my question is, am I the asshole if I cut off contact with her? Now that she's old, she says I have to visit her because I'm all she has left, but when I was a helpless little child and she was all I had left, she used me and traumatized me for life. So am I the asshole? Story number 2. I wasn't catfished, but it was worse. You are not ready for this story. I am happily in a relationship now, but when I say the red flags were flagging. I was 18 and I had met a man on Plenty of Fish, that was my first mistake, and had started catching feelings fast. We would chat every day, he was the first to mention marriage, starting a family, the whole 9 yards, so I fell very quickly too. He had told me he had a child early on, and after a few months he was comfortable bringing her around my family and me. When the relationship became a more serious child, the red flags started rolling in. 1. He worked a seasonal job and had asked for $400 to buy equipment when the season started up. I work hard for my money, and when I love someone I will always do my best to help, but something felt off, so I gave him $200. 2. In the 6 months of being in a relationship I never went to his house. Because of his previous baby mama drama, he would come over at 2 a.m. after work to spend the night and leave at 7 a.m. for work again. 3. One day I am scrolling on my WhatsApp and he has a picture with 3 children, I only know of one, and he proceeds to tell me that he actually has 5 kids with 4 different baby mamas and he pays child support, so don't worry. Did I leave? No. For my birthday rolled around and he not only promised me a gift he never gave me but stood me up at my birthday party. 5. He comes to me with this story that in Canada, if you don't pay child support it comes out of your wages. If you don't have enough you can be taken to court, so he needs a lawyer because the baby mamas are trifling. Being the loyal girlfriend that I am, I go on Facebook and ask community groups if anyone is taking pro bono cases. Not only did I find one, but this loser did not even connect with them. Which leads to the final straw. I got a text from an unsaved number who was his foster brother. Sir, you never said you were adopted, who texted me to say that he was in jail for not paying child support, he is so sorry, and that he still loves me and to wait for him. I blocked them both and moved the hell on. When would you have walked away? Remember, I was young and in love. If you met a Toronto man, you would know anyone who mentioned marriage was a keeper. These men are for the streets. Story number 3. Peer pressure into drinking. So I'm a college student, I'm 19, in the UK, and I'm not a very talkative person, but I'll still be able to have a decent conversation despite the fact that I can be more introverted from time to time. Sometimes me and my friends like to go to a pub after college to chill, eat, drink, etc. I was only going because I was hungry and I wanted to see some people, but my friends mostly went because they felt like having a few pints as we talked. I knew even before going, they would ask me if I was gonna get a drink, as I've been asked this way before into buying one, and I'm not afraid of having one, I just prefer not to, because I believe you don't necessarily need a beer. A cider, vodka, whatever it is to engage better in a conversation. As my friend tells me, I need one to wind down easier, even though I already felt relaxed as it is. Since I'm pretty used to others being quick to judge in situations like this, I've just learned to not give a shit anymore, and I wasn't reluctant on saying that I won't be getting myself anything. That is until they did something a little unexpected. My friends were so pushy with it that they said they will buy something for me, which caught me off guard. I thought me saying I'm just gonna have some food was enough, but they insisted they'd get me a drink. At this point I'd already said no several times, but they'd kept going with it. And they actually bought me something. This shit was not cheap either. To make matters worse, I felt I had no choice but to at least have some of it, and I only drank half the glass. They got disappointed that I hadn't finished it, and even guilt-tripped me with this by saying how they went out of their way into buying this for me, even though I made it clear that I didn't want or need a drink from them and already politely declined their offer. It really pisses me off and also upsets me how people peer pressure others this way and then act as if you're being ungrateful for continuing to refuse their offer. Don't get me wrong, I am appreciative of them doing this. It's a nice thing to do for someone, but it's so fucking normalized in this society to persuade people this way into doing these kind of things like this that in most people's eyes are acceptable, even if the other person would prefer not to, that it genuinely feels wrong to do so. If anything, we should normalize acceptance of not needing a pint or a shot or whatever else, but it will most likely never be that way. I've been having this situation on my mind for a while now. It makes me want to hang out with friends like them less than before. I shouldn't have to technically pay for a meetup because people are so blindly peer pressuring others into having a fat pint, which by the way is so stupidly expensive. It makes me want to go out to do this even less if it means I gotta waste my money on something I never really wanted in the first place. I don't see why it's so hard for people to take no for an answer these days. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.